Alright, this is probably going to take quite some time, but I do want to review all of this with my audience. This is the main paper that I've been working on for a very long time now, and I've been trying to come to grips with how rich stellar evolution really is. And this is just the best stab that I could take at explaining how stars evolve and all the processes and things you would need to explain to really get stellar evolution. This is the main concepts for explaining star evolution, which is, planet formation, according to the general theory of stellar metamorphosis. Of course, the date on there is, July 24th, 2015, but I've been working on this stuff since 2011. And I have here written, since it is known in alternative scientific communities that planet formation is star evolution itself via the general theory of stellar metamorphosis, some basic concepts are needed to piece together the puzzle. Yes, it is a very, very giant puzzle that we're piecing together. Negligence of these concepts in application to any model concerning star evolution, which is planet formation, are more than likely incomplete or false. There are many assumptions which have not been questioned, so before any real investigation can be had, we must question them. Yes, they actually need to be questioned. Just accepting the status quo for the sake of the status quo isn't doing science, it isn't doing philosophy, it's being dead, basically. As the reader shall see, they are hidden assumptions taken as fact or as dogma before there was any real investigation of the stars. Remember, when all this was created, we didn't even know how many exoplanets there were out there. So yeah, keep that in mind. Here we go. Earth was always solid liquid material throughout its evolution. Here I have written, Earth was all phases of matter in larger proportion earlier during its evolution. This assumption led to hundreds of false conclusions, such as Earth forming as is, or very close to as is. Now, this is a very dangerous assumption because all matter in the universe consists of plasma, gas, liquid, and solid material. So ignoring any specific phase of matter to explain how the Earth got to be how it is basically allowing the models to be incomplete right off the bat and to, try to isolate things as, mathematicians do very well. They isolate things. So all the plasmatic materials are isolated in stellar evolution models. All gaseous matter is isolated in gas giants. All solid liquid materials isolated in what they call planets, not realizing that they're all basically the same thing, only in different stages of evolution. Mathematics is very good at isolating things because they're trained to do that via variable finding and that kind of stuff. So basically mathematicians are going to have a hard time with this theory right off the bat because of the way they were trained. Second, Earth did not evolve greatly to its current configuration and structure, involving every single chemical and physical law currently known to humanity. It formed as is from preformed rocks via gravity alone. And I here have written, star science is rightly the king of the sciences, not cosmology, because cosmology ignores chemistry and the laws of thermodynamics. Yes, in cosmological articles, they don't talk about chemistry. They outright ignore it. Exothermic, endothermic reactions are ignored. Electrochemical reactions are ignored. Phase transitions are ignored. Substitutionary reactions are ignored. They ignore all of chemistry inside of cosmology because in cosmology, they have their mythological Big Bang event that does everything. And they also ignore the laws of thermodynamics because they have all matter and energy surreptitiously coming out of what? Like, what caused the Big Bang? There's no cause for the Big Bang. It's just there and all of a sudden it exploded. That is a clear ignoring of basic thermodynamics. Cosmologists try to keep stars as nuclear powered so their own pseudoscience will not be exposed. as they posit impossible or contradictory scenarios, such as time itself spontaneously appearing absent the time required to carry out the magical Big Bang seed. For instance, if you're going to have time created from the Big Bang, then how much time was there to cause the Big Bang to begin with? They don't have any answer for that. They just ignore it. Okay, here's the third assumption. All stars are plasma, hot gas only. Here I have written, as stars age, they cool down. Plasma becomes gas, that's called plasma recombination. Hot gas becomes supercritical fluid, which then cools down further to liquid and solid material. This means stars are comprised of all types of matter in very large proportions as they evolve. And I also have later in this article an actual classification of the stars based off their physical characteristics, not some mythological Big Bang event. Number 4. All stars have visible spectrums. That's the assumption. The truth is that the vast majority of stars do not have spectrums because they have cooled down too much. And this is talking about visible spectrums here, not infrared spectrums. Astronomers call them exoplanets or planets. I see I had a typo there. And they exist in even larger proportions as do population 1 stars. And I have population 1 stars as plasmatic young stars or stars with visible spectrums. Number 5. All stars are massive like the sun. And I have here written, all stars lose mass and energy in great amounts as they evolve and cool. They can start out big and hot like the sun, but will eventually cool and lose the majority of their mass to solar wind, coronal mass ejections, solar flares, photoevaporation, impacts, etc. This also means that as it shrinks, it also loses angular momentum, mass loss, which means its rotational velocity will remain constant as it cools and dies. Number 6. According to establishment, their assumption is that Neptune and Uranus are icy per their ice giant names. And I have here written, they emit as much, if not more, energy than they receive from the sun. Icy bodies would be cold worlds, not worlds which emit more heat and energy than they receive from their parent stars. Or I should say host stars there, because Neptune and Uranus didn't come from the sun. Neptune and Uranus are clearly hot and hellish in their interiors, not icy. In this theory I'm drawing up, they are the last stages of stellar evolution before the very last remnants of their thick atmosphere start dissipating, revealing the Earth-like star or planet, whichever you want to call it, in its interior. And here's one of the biggest assumptions that need to be corrected. Planets are byproducts of star formation. Every single astronomer on the Earth, except for the alternative circle astronomers who are aware of this theory, believe that planets are the byproducts of star formation. And I have here written, planets are byproducts of stellar evolution. As a star evolves and cools, it forms one planet, not multiple planets as it retains its spherical shape, cools, and dies. This is a simple Occam's razor. Mother Nature does not waste. According to establishment's versions of events, Mother Nature wastes, so she creates a star and the waste products become planets. I think that's highly unlikely. She does everything 100%. Number 8. The disk nebula, which are observed, are evidence for planet formation. This is a very bad assumption that has gotten in the way of many hundreds of theorizers, and they just won't let go of it for some strange reason. They are not evidence for planet formation, they are evidence for planet destruction and collision events. The disks radiate strongly in the infrared, meaning the material is liquid hot like magma. In essence, they are shrapnel fields, and the shrapnel can re-enter the atmospheres of other stars as meteors and can be found on the ground as meteorites, and even leaves rings around other evolved stars in asteroid fields and in meteor showers. This explains why there was one article that they had a protoplanetary disk just disappearing within a few years. And they don't understand how a protoplanetary disk could disappear. No. The answer is that the shrapnel after the collision happened cooled down and it stopped radiating in the infrared. When you take matter and you smash it against itself in large quantities, sure, it can be red hot, but if it's in outer space and it can radiate all that energy away effectively, it's going to cool down to where it stops being visible in the infrared spectrum. So that explains why that protoplanetary disk magically disappeared. Number 9. The evolution of all the solar system objects relies on the fate of the Sun alone. Now I've written, the solar system is clearly an adopted family with many solar systems inside of it. It is much more reasonable to actually look at the objects and notice they're all different in size, look different, and are in different random orbits, meaning the Sun plays a minor and temporary role in their evolution. This is a very vast, or a very different philosophy than what is accepted and taught in major universities around the world. This is very, very different. Number 10, here's another major assumption that they use, I see a lot of. The Earth always had a really thin atmosphere. Now, thin by maybe 100 miles or 200 miles, that's thin. So yeah, okay, they have it thin as 200 or 300 miles, but that's still thin compared to Jupiter, compared to the Sun. Since the Earth evolved from a much larger state, its atmosphere was actually vastly thicker and thinned as it evolved to its current stage of evolution. We can observe the Earth as it was in earlier stages of evolution. They are called stars, gas giants, brown dwarfs. We can also observe the future fate of the Earth. They are called population 4 stars: Mercury, Venus, Mars, etc. Let's continue. Number 11. The current orbital configurations of the solar system objects became their original orientation soon after they formed out of a disk. And I have here, this assumes capture is impossible and orbits cannot change, regardless if we have observed exoplanets, which are evolved stars, in retrograde, backwards orbits, and offset axes. The rule of thumb for solar system formation is that the objects are all captured to form the system. The disk theory is not needed at all. It is clear that large objects capture smaller ones as the larger have more angular momentum. This is how all star systems form: binary, triple, quad systems, you name it. Number 12. The iron cores of the older stars, planets such as Mercury, Mars, Venus, Earth, formed at around the same time as their crusts. This is very important to understand. This assumption forcefully places the differentiation process itself as a quick, secondary, and unimportant process compared to the concept of plate tectonics, regardless if the core is a much larger, centralized object which gives the Earth its very structure and size. If anything, the crust received the majority of the attention because it is what we interact with, and geologists focus on the crust more than anything else. A more reasonable, realistic approach is to look at the Earth itself as a vast, three-dimensional structure, and the crust is a secondary, if not unimportant feature in regards to the evolution of the Earth itself. The crust has its importance for the sustaining of life, but it is not the structure which the Earth relies on for stability. The core is the foundational structure to begin the differentiation process itself during stellar evolution. As well, there is an absence of volcanism on older dead stars, meaning their cores also remain, regardless if there are any plate tectonics. As well, plate tectonics itself does not account for the evolution of Earth during earlier stages, therefore is probably a vastly incomplete theory and probably uses ideas which have no mechanism, such as what the driving force for the plates really is. So there you go. I will continue in a few minutes. Or I will continue this in another video.